we don't want to spend our bandwidth pursuing things that we're not going to get anything for, and it's just going to go to our investor. And that just like always like upset me. I would just be like, really? Like you like this is someone who gave you their money and their trust, and like so it's important for investors to know about this stuff because some development partners literally don't care.
Welcome to the Path to Passive podcast, where we talk about building wealth and empowering lifestyle through commercial real estate investing for tech professionals. I always wish that other tech professionals reaching financial freedom had documented their journey along the way, so I'm doing it for the rest of us. Join us as we explore stories, many failures, and lessons learned along the way. I hope you enjoy and subscribe. Hey, today's guest is Charles de Jager, the founder and CEO of Energy Credit Consulting, where he helps businesses unlock the full potential of energy credit programs and tax incentives. With years of experience in navigating the complex world of energy efficiency, renewable energy, and financial incentives, Charles guides clients in maximizing their sustainability efforts while driving down energy costs. He's helping business approach energy from an environmental responsibility and profitability and also impact way, ensuring they stay ahead of the curve in a rapid evolving industry. In this episode, what I really enjoyed was how candid he was, talking about how he got into energy, why it's impactful, and we spent a good amount of time talking about the problem and the solution so that you can get an idea as an investor or as a developer or as someone who is also acquiring properties to understand what is the real environment, right? What is the playing field with energy credits, energy consulting, how it could help you. And also, one of the things I made sure to ask at the end, which is what are some of the common misconceptions and objections as well. So I really enjoyed this episode with Charles. If you're someone that is, like I said, an investor, developer, someone who's acquiring properties and improving them, this is something that you're going to want to listen to. And for all my tech professionals listening, we do get into some details here. So if you're looking to understand the ins and outs of in the details of energy and put on your technical hat here while doing so, I think this is going to be a great episode for you as we do get into some of that. But I urge you to listen to this because it's important to understand how energy affects your properties as that investor, especially. So join us as we dive into that crucial role of energy credits in modern business strategies and on this episode. Please, as always, comment, like, subscribe, and share wherever you are listening to. I can continue to get more and more guests that serve you. Thanks so much. Enjoy. Charles de Jager, the founder and CEO of Energy Credit Consulting, a firm that specializes in helping businesses and individuals optimize their energy credits and maximize financial incentives in the energy sector. Dude, Charles, thank you so much for being here, man. I'm super stoked to have you here. I had saw some of your stuff on LinkedIn, was checking you out, and I thought he is who I need to have here to come on the podcast to share what you've learned with the audience. Doing some research, I also saw that you had worked in a couple places, including SpaceX and other places like Lockheed, like we had briefly talked about. But what I really want you to do is share your expertise around energy consulting and how that impacts the property, right? The asset, the investment, how that helps the ownership team, and of course, for everyone listening, how that helps the investor as well. How does that trickle through? So welcome to the show. Please go ahead and introduce yourself for the people. Sir, over to you.
Yeah, great to meet you. I'm Charles de Jager. I'm the founder of Energy Credit Consulting. Yeah, I guess that's me.
And talk to me a little bit about what energy credit consulting, like, where did this start for you? How did you get into this? Who do you like to serve, like your clients, and how exactly do you help them?
Yeah, so it's mostly multifamily and commercial. So that's something. Actually, I think that's the very first thing that most people need to understand is that when it comes to like energy consulting, it doesn't really matter what type of property it is because it's all centered around like energy code, and every type of building that's undergoing any sort of like renovation or like somewhat like major renovation or new construction project all have energy code that they have to meet, just like they have to meet an electrical code or a plumbing code or whatever code. they all have to meet that code in every state in the United States. And so like it really works for anyone. And so I think the most common question we get all the time is like, oh, but does this work for my building? And it's like, yes. Like, yes, it works for every building. Every building has an energy code. And so like the biggest thing people don't understand about it is that like the government or the cost to increase improve the grid and upgrade the grid is significantly more expensive than what it costs the government to pay you money to make sure that you use less energy. And
Mm.
so like lots of people, they just they don't understand that. And so when they hear about energy credits or whatever new incentive it is, there's always some new program that somebody's like spinning it off as now. And it's just that principle. It's like that is the reason they give you money. And so if people don't understand that, they oftentimes just think like it's too good to be true, or like you need to be like some super environmental builder. But like, yeah, that's like the core thing. And I think like the biggest like gap that we're able to help in is that there's like multiple code paths. So there's lots of different ways to fulfill energy code. And you have like what's like called the prescriptive path and the performance path, but like really you just want to look at it like custom versus like not custom.
Hmm.
And so like not custom has to be 15% more efficient because it's like it has to account for the fact that like you know certain buildings are going to perform worse or better with just a standard. It's like if I just said to you, like, hey, here's an extra large t shirt. Everybody gets extra large t shirts. Some people it's going to fit really well. Some people it's not going to fit at all.
Yep.
It's going to be super tight, and some people it's going to be really baggy. And like, it's the same thing with the prescriptive path. Sometimes it's overly efficient, and sometimes it's like not efficient at all. And so when people take that code path, which is the most common one that people take, they're building way more efficient than code requires, and they just don't realize it because they're taking a fast, quick, easy path.
Hmm.
And when we find those people, they're almost always qualifying for incentives because they've already designed that. They think it's just the standard, but they just took the fast, quick, easy path, and it's required to be better. And so
Got it.
it's just like those little things are the things that people don't know. It's very hard to articulate in a non-technical way. So it's like even just now, I tried my absolute best. It was probably a little bit too much. And so, um,
I
but
think that's
yeah,
really cool though.
yeah, those are the two opportunities. And then from there on, it's just like knowing which incentives. Like there's always something. Like
I like what you were saying there, and I think the analogy of what you were talking about with the t-shirt, the extra large t-shirt, or whatever the t-shirt size is, right? In
yeah,
that case, is a good one. But going back to framing the problem and framing how you help is like you were talking about, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but you were saying that the the energy consulting that you do is the knowledge, the background knowledge that you have is really the understanding of how our government um, uh, thinks about that. It is more costly to upgrade the entire power grid than it is to incentivize people to use less energy. Right?
exactly. That's
Perfect. And so
that's the reason incentives exist. That's it.
got it. And so that incentive exists because so that there's just less energy consumption for, every individual building. And that means one, it save, it's great for the environment, save costs, but also it means that that power that is not being used can be redistributed other places. Is that about right?
Exactly. Exactly. And so a lot of people they mistake energy stuff for like, what side of the political aisle you're on. And like they'll be like, "Oh, well Boston is or California or New York are all super heavy and their energy codes because they're, whatever." And it's like No, it's because they're all in extremely densely populated cities with no like additional grid. And you look at Texas, who didn't really have much of a care in the world for it, and they had grid issues. And literally, like this state was like, I think it was like freezing, and they couldn't get like power to people's houses, and like
Yep.
it was like crazy, like a couple years back. And so it's like,
Yes.
no, like the more densely populated you are, the more you need this, and like people are like, oh, but like don't they want you to use more power, the power companies? And it's like, it's not, they don't even really pay for anything. They're very, utility companies are very subsidized by the government. Extreme, like, it's basic. Like, when you see utility company in most states, you might as well just like substitute that for government because like most of their money comes from the government in most states. Like, there's a
Talk to
lot
me
of
about that. What that means. Some people might hear about it being, a company being subsidized, but let's explain to me, like, expand on that. So I want to make sure that we have the listener has a solid understanding of like what the problem is and how this really helps. We add some texture and background to this. So can you elaborate, like, what is from a power company to these like, I don't know, like a tier one company or so, to like someone else that resells it, or and what a subsidy actually means for we'll
right.
just start there.
Yeah. So I think it's like important to understand the whole chain first of power. So you have suppliers who create the power. That could be a nuclear power plant, a coal plant, a solar farm. It could be anything, right?
Hmm.
They create the power, and then you have the distributors, which are utility companies, and they own the wires that move the power. And so, um, and and so the tough thing is when you have a massive need for a product, but the average individual cannot pay the actual cost required for it.
Sure.
And
Hmm.
so what happens is like, you have these utility companies that started out probably very, very profitable and great. And some of them are, some of the big ones like Duke Energy, stuff like, they're great companies. But then there's lots of cities where everybody still wants power. This is America. You
Yep.
need power. But the distribution cost is like, we add so much power usage to each home every single day. And, all just this, our cities, the electricity usage grows so fast. It's
Mm.
just so expensive to keep up with. And so a subsidy is when like the amount of cost that it takes to keep the system running or to keep the company that runs the system. So like the utility company that has the lines to keep them running, it costs more than what they can bring in because like to charge a reasonable amount, it would not be reasonable for most people,
The
you know.
consumer can't bear, they can't actually pay.
Exactly. And so that's where the government steps in and they give them money to say like, okay, hey, we know that we're going to need we can just look at the math, we can see where energy usage is going. Right now, maybe it's profitable, but once we hit this point, this breaking point where we simply can't push more power across the lines without
Mhm.
major issues, well, the company can't afford to upgrade the grid because they're operating on such slim margins. And so, what do they need to do? The government steps in and they twofold. They, one, help pay for those upgrades, and then two, help run initiatives to push usage down. So they're kind of like
Mhm.
fighting it on both fronts. So a lot of people think that like the whole environmental thing is like on some end of the political spectrum, but in
Right.
reality, it's just a power issue. Like that's
It's just
it.
math.
It's nothing to do with anything else. Those are just talking points to get people excited. It's like, so people actually care because if most people, everything I just talked about, like they're just going to stop listening. Like they don't,
Yeah.
but if you tell people a whole bunch of exciting stories about how it's going to change the world in a very simple way, that
Mhm.
also is pretty true,
Mhm.
then like a lot more people get excited. And so,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, fortunately for us, Charles, we have a lot of this is for tech professionals, and we're speaking to that analytical brain to be like, what does he mean problems? Like, oh, like what are we talking about here? So, taking a couple minutes to dive into some of those details is like, okay, now I understand. The listener can understand it and can articulate it better, and actually understands like how this actually affects them because cloud and tech, and of course AI and all the things can get super technical. So I appreciate you diving into some of this. So help me understand just quickly on this one, and then we'll move on. Is some of the problems that can come up about pushing more power across lines? Is that like a physical thing of the wires, so to speak, and the infrastructure that needs to scale, or is it that the tech needs to be upgraded, or is it just scaled?
so we're getting to a point where my my engineering capacity is limited, like how much I know about it. But like from a general standpoint, I just know that like okay, if you have an EV car, this issue, like you can only push so many like watts through a line. Like
Okay,
lines have like gauges, it's
there we
like
go. Hmm.
and it's like five, six, whatever. I don't know the numbers, but
Hmm.
you know
Yep.
there's different gauges, and they can only push so much power across the line. It has to do with watts, basically. I think it's watts. It's just how
Hmm.
much power goes, um, and so it's only rated for a certain amount. And so when they go and install the lines initially, this could have been like decades ago, and like they weren't expecting for every like human to have these like crazy heat pump systems and these like fans. Like just think like you go back 50 years, like it was like you had a TV
And a
and
microwave.
lights and yeah, and a microwave and like and now it's like no, we want 5 fridges and 2 dishwashers and and all kinds of lights in every single crevice of the home, and we want 10
Right.
TVs, and it's like and we want to charge our cars from these things, and it's like
Right.
you throw out all like the average human uses so much. And then there's the fact that like a lot of people don't understand this. Oh, and not to mention the size. This is more use space. The size of the home increased so much. So
Totally.
now it's like almost, I think almost doubled like over the last 50 years. Like the
Hmm.
size of the average household, and so like square footage, and so yeah, they were designed for just a lot less, and then they have to go in. I'm pretty sure it has to, I think it's like transformers and wiring. They just need to be upgraded to be able to allow
Hmm.
more power to go across them. But that's, I'm sure an electrical engineer or somebody is listening. They're like, dude, what are you talking about? But
But the problem is, yeah, I got you. There's the understanding of just really um infrastructure ratings up to safety points is kind of where it's at. And so it might be a little bit of both. It might be the upgrade technology for different ratings to handle things. And the infrastructure to be scaled. I mean, I'm sure every listener, every tech professional can be thinking like, well, a certain fiber optic cabling can do a certain amount of signal,
yeah,
and so like we're only going to get a certain amount of throughput based on the bandwidth and things like that as well. So very similar, and that's the analogy I was trying to make. But what
yeah.
you were talking about the home getting not only bigger, but the amount of devices. I know there's this meme out there like, I have how many screens can I get between me and the wall? It's like it's my phone, you know, and my iPad and my laptop, and then there's like my something else and the 80 inch screen TV on the side, and I'm there in my like Apple goggles or whatever it is, right? Um, but it's terrible, but it makes a ridiculous picture to say that. Not to mention, the 5 fridges and the double microwaves upstairs
Yeah.
and downstairs and everything else. But the energy consumption has absolutely increased. And so talk to me about, the incentives that you're talking about. It's the incentivized to be more to reduce energy, or is it to be more efficient? Because I can't see like, don't buy that next device that you want, right? It's like there has
Yeah.
to be another way. So talk to me about what the incentive is to reduce energy. Is that it?
Yeah, it's basically just like reduce energy usage because like most people when they think like energy savings, they think like solar. I'm going to install solar, right? But like, think of it from like like even from a solar standpoint, it's like, okay, well, but if you reduce the amount of power you use first, well, then you need a much smaller solar system. So, like, let's do this because this will save some cost too and solve some issues as
And
well.
this is energy from the main suppliers, because here with solar, you're getting energy from a different source. So
Exactly.
yeah, just to clarify.
Yeah, but even so, I'm pretty certain that like solar just goes back to the grid anyways. Like in most states, like whatever you're producing just goes straight to the supplier. I don't
Hmm.
like. I think it actually no powers your home first, and then anything excess goes back to the supplier. So it's like a lot of that stuff is going through the loop anyways, and so
Okay.
like you like reducing the energy usage it's just like I mean if you can, why not? Now, I'd say like right now, there's two areas we're kind of focusing on. One, you have incentives, right? So you have like the biggest one is just utility incentives. Like you just no matter what, where you are, like if you're a real estate developer, like just or an architect or what architects know this really well because they have to search oftentimes for the developer. But like
Mhm.
go to the utility website, whatever it is, the electric one. The gas might have stuff too. Water, they might have very small incentives, but go to the
Mhm.
utility website, the electric one, and just search if you have Duke Energy, which they actually usually have the worst incentives, but because they're massive, but like and very profitable, they don't really need it. So you just type in Duke Energy utility rebate programs and then you can put like I don't know new construction or renovation and commercial building or whatever. You're a business, right? Not just an individual consumer because those are very different programs. And so like yeah, you do that. I like it's really just a 50-50 shot and you're going to get something. And again, the biggest thing earlier before this can work for any type of building at scale. If you're,
Commercial or residential.
yeah, commercial or residential. It can work, but it's at scale is usually when you just see the biggest like benefit for your time. Like
Mhm.
if you're doing like a 4 building complex, like you can, and like if you have extra time, but then like sure go for it. But most real estate developers are very busy people. It's a very busy job, and it's
It
like
won't be the hardest ROI. So that's why you're talking about at scale. You mean something like 100 apartment,
a hundred is
or
great.
more.
That's a sweet spot. I would say that at the point it becomes worth it in some states, in some programs, is about 20 units and up. Like if you're in
Okay.
Massachusetts, I mean, like 20,000 square feet or 20 units and up. Around that point, like in Massachusetts, you'll get like 20 or 30 grand from that, for a couple hours worth of your time. And so, like,
Hmm.
for a lot of people, that's worth it, or at least worth paying somebody to do it for you. And there's tons of companies like us that, will go and get those types of incentives for you.
So let's pivot to that. So the incentives can be to be more reduce energy, and that also means being more energy efficient, right? Some stuff like when an area, I don't know, we'll just talk about this from a um, I'm thinking like a multifamily apartment complex, or even like, many people are returning back to office now, as an example. And
Yeah.
so those commercial offices, or when you're not on a floor, not in an area, the lights turn off, things like that, right? So
Yeah.
that's one way to reduce consumption. But let's focus on um, and that becomes clear how it impacts the bill, because anyone's listening, you don't want your compute or your databases or whatever to be running when they're not used, so turn them off, or portions of them. Similar thing for the infrastructure. But how do you go about like a big picture, like how do you go about helping that apartment complex team, right? The owners, to do this consulting and to actually realize some of these gains. And it's like a one-time gain. Is it, over time? Talk through some of that at a high level.
So it's almost always a one-time gain, and so we help in two ways. Like either we get in during the design phase and we work with the architects, and we quite literally design the energy code. And it's like, hey, these are the requirements for your energy code for your new construction or renovation project. We are going to design 4 incentives. So we're literally going to look and see, and we're going to do a custom path. So you already get like a 15% drop in like expenses on what you're paying, because like every percent of efficiency costs money, right? And so there's automatically a 15% reduction if you do a custom path opposed to generic like
T-shirt
extra
sized.
large t-shirt size. Yeah. If you do the custom path, there's an automatic 15% reduction. And that's just in the code. It's a formula. Like it's like, hey, you can be 15% less efficient than the other path. And so like that's already cost realized, right? Like that you're reducing that cost. So that's the first part of the way we help. It's just by going the custom route. And
Hmm.
then the second way we help is by like doing trade-offs around incentives. So we're like, okay, well, let's say the easiest way to understand it is just with like probably like lighting. Most utility companies are going to offer you, 5, 10, $15 per light fixture that's an LED, and because they're just extremely efficient. And
Hmm.
so what we'll do is we'll just say like, okay, well, like if the utility company is going to offer you $15 per LED that you install, and it only costs $3 more than the alternative, then now you're netting $12 per LED fixture. So we're going to go that route, and not only does that help you, like from a cost standpoint, you're more profitable now.
Hmm.
Also, it increases your efficiency. And since you're doing a custom route, it's like a slider game. So if you're more efficient in lighting, you can be less efficient somewhere else. So let's take your insulation or your HVAC or your water heating and drop that down a little bit. And now you're saving costs there as well. And so it's just a big trade off game. And so you look at where the incentives are. That's why it's like it's very important to understand the incentives from a design like point,
Hmm.
because then you can right at that point you can see like where are they going to give me money to be efficient. We're going to design around that. If they're going to give me $500 per ton for a heat pump to be a SEER 16, yeah, that's pretty high, but now I get to drop my insulation, my windows, my everything, and all that cost is going down, and I'm getting paid to make this upgrade. These
Hmm.
ones I'm not getting paid for, but this one I'm getting paid to make this upgrade by the utility company, and it's almost always cash. So like you do also have federal incentives, like tax credits, deductions, and a lot of those just got like kicked and replaced with a new one. And the new one is actually a cash incentive. It's called like Homes in Here, but it's through each state, so it's very different now. It's more like utility companies where like it's a hit or miss. You might have it, you might not, just depending on the state. But like yeah, that's kind of the game we play. And if we can do it from the design process standpoint, like we can design your energy code, we can bring all of those cost savings in at the design point. But that's the best way that we can help people.
And that would be much earlier in the project.
Yeah, like it's
Okay.
literally like they've engaged their architect and they're telling their architect, we would like an energy consultant to do our energy design code who's going to optimize for
Cool.
cost.
Ver- versus something that would be an improvement later on if it's already built, is what you
Yeah,
mean.
like and I'll be honest with you, most of the way that we ran our company for a long time is we would just come in on the tail end of the development. And it's like, hey, they're almost done because that's when everything gets paid out. And we just run performance based contracts, and we'd say like, hey, like you have this available. You didn't know you qualified for it through the utility company or for whatever tax credit. We'll do all the paperwork or certify you for it. It just depends on what it is. And then we just want a percentage of the cut. And so we
Very
just,
cool.
what we did at first is we would just run through companies trying to find who qualifies already and just doesn't know about it. And
Yeah.
and believe it or not, there's a lot of people. There's a lot of people who also do know about it, but those are usually the very big companies who can afford to have somebody like me on staff doing this full time. And so um, it's a lot of the mid-sized to smaller developers that they just don't know. And so coming in on the tail end can work, but it's just kind of like if you do it from the beginning, there's so much more savings realized, and like that helps out developers on the actual balance sheet when they're trying to get financing and stuff, So
Hmm. Very cool. So when does that savings or really the payment get realized? Because ultimately the flow through here, to continue the thought, is how does this impact the investor, right? We're talking about how it affects the project, but how does that affect when do they actually get payment? It sounds like if it's in the development, it's kind of like dollars. Is it dollars saved, or is it dollars spent by the developer first and then it comes back to them later on?
uh, great question. So it can be both. Um, if you're optimizing for cost, like you're just like, hey, I just want it to be as cheap as possible up front. We just need
Yeah,
to get this deal through. Then we can just say like, okay, we're not going to spend a single extra dollar past what you would have spent going the standard extra large t-shirt wrap.
to complete the project. Yep.
Yeah, you just and like so we'll just say we're going to take every cost cut possible. Like by moving sliders around, we'll look and see like, okay, what is basically you just look at like dollars per energy saved. It's like how many dollars do I have to spend to save energy,
Yep.
and you want that as low as possible. And so we
Hmm.
just look at that, and we just drill down the cost as much as possible by making smart trade offs in the area based off what people are charging to do certain work. Whether it's lighting or HVAC or water
Hmm.
heat. And so that's one way you can do it, and that literally just drops your cost. So right at the beginning, your cost is lower, and you can go and take that and use it somewhere else. So that's one way. If you're more just about like long-term ROI or like profit focused, then
Hmm.
it's going to be more like, okay, like we talked about earlier, okay, well, we'll spend the extra $3 for the light, but we're going to get 15 later. The later is at the end of the project. So it's once construction or renovation is complete, that's when most companies pay you out. And the way that it works is like, as silly as it sounds, is like you just get sent a check in the mail and that's it. And like a lot of people don't understand like the compliance to do this is like pretty easy. Like it's like
Mm.
it depends on who you're working with, but like it's pretty easy. I mean, we had one client, we got him like a check for $1.1 million, and like I'll never forget this. Like he didn't even know he qualified for it. They thought that they qualified for like 100,000 through this program. But this is another thing. Like the utility companies often have staff that are just, I don't want to call them bad, but they're just overworked.
Yeah.
And
Busy.
yeah, giving away free money is a busy job.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they, they like a lot of the time you might just get a rep who's just busy and not paying attention and might push you down the wrong path because affordable versus non-affordable, there's like very big price differences for how much they'll pay you for things. And
Hmm.
so like he just got pushed down the wrong path, and then he ended up like they were only going to get 100 grand, and then we came in and we're like, oh dude, you're supposed to be down this path, and we had to convince the reps otherwise, and that was a lot of time and stuff. And then like we got him 1.1 million, and I'll
Nice.
never forget, he gets the check and he's like, hey, like I need like some sort of like document showing why I got this. And I was like, they didn't send you anything? He's like, no, they just sent me a check in the mail. It's literally it. He's like, this is so sketchy looking. He's like, I have to explain this to people. But
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool, man. That must have been, you know, what a cool payday for him too, though, right?
yeah, well, and for a lot of people, for that one, and we had another one, we got him 492,000 in cash. And like, for these people, like it was like, hey, they had just gotten hammered by the interest rate hike, and they were
Yeah.
on variable interest rates doing developments, and both of them had got hammered. And for them, that money quite literally meant that they did not have to shut the development down. Like
Mm.
they literally said word for word, like we would have shut, like this would be over if we did not get this. Like, and so it can be huge. I mean, you just get a random sack of money thrown in, like it's kind of a
Yeah.
big deal. So it can definitely help a lot. But designing for it is the best. But you can push it anyway. You can either get cost savings or you can get a check at the end, or there's like tax credits and other things along those lines, but most of the tax credits have been phased out.
Yeah.
But they would, like the solar and all that stuff. Solar's still around for a little bit, and like, you just find an investor who wants tax credits, usually a bank, sell it to them for like 95 cents on the dollar, like 75 cents on the dollar.
But that's really cool. So the biggest ways that again, and I know this is a many shades of gray, but just for the newer listener, the categories and the buckets of, well, okay, Charles said this one way, okay, check, commit memory. The second one is this way, is kind of is the if a developer like wants to build at the integrate the energy consulting tax credits, they can and include it as part of their planning at the very start, and choose to do the project at the lowest cost to complete the project, right, and get something later on. um, or the other bucket is the development team can choose to bring in um, all of the energy study, right, the consulting from you guys, um, uh, to see how to build to code, which is build to code for that building, right? That's what it means, build to code.
Yeah.
And then that team will choose to spend the money up front to realize the savings from day one, right? Is
Yeah, like
that about it?
yeah, it's like a 2 to 3 year turnaround. So it's like,
Okay,
yeah,
but much earlier.
yeah. Well, so it's like once they complete the project, that's when they're going to get paid out for it. So technically, they are incurring costs like 2 years prior when the construction starts or when they're installing.
Right. But I mean, day one, like when development is actually starting versus the planning.
Yeah,
Right. Because that goes into a whole other conversation here about like, the entire cycle of like land acquisition to entitlement to like
yeah,
build, right, all that.
yeah.
but
That's right.
but
Sorry.
much earlier in the project versus later on, right?
Yeah, like design phase versus construction phase, I guess
Yeah.
how you would put it, right? Yeah.
Perfect. Thank
But
you.
one thing though, to a distinction to understand is like the if you just want the cost savings path, like you still need somebody to do that for you, because like
Mhm.
it's you've got to have, like, if you ever go a customer out, you have to have an energy model done that like proves the amount of energy usage. That's why you can drop the perform like 15% performance off, and so somebody's got to do that for you. That's like we just allow develop. We actually just provide both options. We just show, hey, if you want to spend more to make more, you can take this route. If you want just the cheapest cost to get it done, you can go this route. And so like um, both are just an optimization problem. Like,
Mhm.
but yeah, I
Mhm.
don't know if I'm yeah.
No, that's cool. It makes a lot of sense. And I mean, even having that from the developer team or the ownership team, the awareness of taking any optimization path would still be worth it because you're still realizing more ROI than the money spent. Right. So it's kind of like a no-brainer. Like, we should do this. Like, right.
Yes. Yeah. The only thing to consider is if there's the additional consulting fees to go that path.
Right. Because that's what adds up on cost, independent of cost savings for any money spent.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yes,
that
but
makes
that's
sense.
you can easily factor that in. And so like when we do our net, most companies like who do what we do, they have done both sides, like the fulfillment of like energy code, like because you have to go and test stuff and inspect, and the design. And so
Mhm.
you can pretty easy, like I know all the numbers across the board. And so like how much everybody charges. And so like for both services. And so you just factor that in, you're not gonna so what we do is just kind of a little different, and I
Mhm.
think is cool. Is like we're like, hey, look, like we're gonna give you like a cost, like lowest cost path, and we'll give you like highest spend more to make more like profit path. And
Yep.
then like, look, if the custom paths aren't better for you, then like the quick, easy, prescriptive path that you pay a couple grand for, then
Yep.
like you can just have your next one free. Like, we're not gonna try and like charge you for stuff that's like
Yep.
not better. And
Cool.
we're confident often enough that it is better that it's like, usually a no brainer.
Yeah. What are um some of the common misconceptions businesses have? I mean, we're basically effectively saying any building can do this. You'd be crazy not to, except except if it doesn't have the, like you were talking about earlier. It was like the sweet spot was like 100 units for an apartment complex, but surely there's you know for size of strip mall, for size of industrial, for size of whatever the building is, right? But what are some of the common misconceptions you've heard from like Charles? Like, this sounds good, dude, but yeah, like I don't know if this is for me.
Yeah, I would say most of the time it's just a time thing. Um, Developers are busy people, and it's usually like the nice thing about doing it from an energy code perspective is you're going to have to do this no matter what, and your architect quarterbacks the whole thing. So like you don't even really you just have to give the okay to the architect. So that's one nice
Mm,
thing about it. But I would say the number one thing is just like, um, actually, this is it. This is a huge issue. It's random. Like, you might have one power company or utility company or locality, whatever it may be, whoever's giving you the money for free, or not for free, for upgrades.
yeah.
Whoever's giving you that money in one like city, there might be loads of money, and then the next city there might be absolutely nothing.
Mm,
And so I think a lot of people like they kind of just get tired of like checking, because like you might go 4 times in a row. Like, I would say a lot of developers usually have about like 3 to 5 projects they send us up front.
hmm.
And when we used to just check and help them comply and get the money fast, like they'd send us like 3 to 5, and like you know it more often than not, like 4 out of 5 have nothing, and then the fifth one has like 300 grand or like 500 grand or like $1 million, and you're just like, what the heck? And it's like,
Hmm.
it just depends on, it's totally random. It just depends on the locality, like exactly what's going on there. And so that's a huge issue, is like people will just kind of like see it not work 1 or 2 times and then just be like, I'm done with it. But if you're
Got it.
designing for it, it should work every time. Now, if, like you said, if it's too small, it doesn't make sense. So like 20,000 square feet and up is like the sweet spot. 100,000 square feet is when it starts getting really good. Like, that's where it's like,
Mm,
if you're doing 100,000 square feet and up, most of the time people doing those developments just know, like, okay, this is something we need to do because the money is there. It's all like economy scale, right?
yep.
So,
Do,
sorry.
do you happen to know? So that sounds like doesn't know if there's any credit programs that work for me. Is kind of one of them. Doesn't know, like, is my development the right size, right? And another complaint, like top level complaint of this, is like, dude, the last time I checked, there was nothing for me, right? Was one.
Yeah, or they'll get sold on it, and then they give a bunch of information to some consultant, and we've I've been done this too, and then it just doesn't work out. Like, because that's what I think where people get burned the most, is like they'll sign up for something, maybe even pay a deposit, and then they're told there's all this money, there is a program, but then they don't get any of it, and
Ah,
they don't understand why. And the reason why, realistically, is because they're not designing for it. They're trying to come in the back half and just snag money that, like, oh, cool, found money.
yeah.
That's the reason why. Um, and they didn't design quite good enough. And
It's we
so,
tried this already, and we had started that, but something happened. So why are you any different?
yeah, that's a huge issue. Yeah, huge issue. And
Okay.
then I would say, from a design standpoint, what people get the most upset about is like, and this one sucks. Like, if it's happened to people, it really just sucks. Like,
Mm.
where the designers don't understand, and this is like the most common engineer issue I've heard ever. Like goes back to like Lockheed days when I'd be talking to the machinists and they'd be like, those engineers, they don't get it. And it's like,
Mm,
and so I like it's where the people designing don't understand what works in reality, and so they design for an incentive or design for these programs. And then in reality, it doesn't pan out the way they thought it would because they don't
got
have
it.
any experience in the field or just not enough
Right.
experience in general. And then when it gets designed, well, this designer's already been paid. He doesn't care anymore. And
Yeah,
you
yeah,
can't
yeah.
go changing that stuff. The change orders are way more expensive than usually what it's going to be worth. And so then they go design for something, it doesn't actually work, and then they get screwed. And
Right.
that's where people get really burned, is when they go so far to hire somebody to design for these things, and then they get like they don't get it, like, and that's just like it was just a bad consultant, like.
Yeah. Yeah, we call that we've we call that DevOps now, developer and operations. It's when the architects and whoever, we're talking tech, but just to make that analogy for everyone getting a chuckle out of, someone has worked support somewhere in their life where they're like, these dudes that built this, like, what are they thinking? This doesn't work. And they just chucked it over the fence where that comes from. They're like, okay, we have to support it. But if they had that field experience, like you're saying, or knew like how this thing works, and they've driven it for a period of time, they're like, oh, okay, like that's not going to work because at some point that thing is going to break, whatever. So we need to make sure we fix that upstream, right?
Exactly.
Um,
And
yeah.
that's where our background kind of helped a lot. Like since we started from the incentive side of like just getting it, not designing for it, we spent like we understand what works. Like I actually like would go into the field with our teams and go and look at this stuff and like why is it not? We designed like they're the main the engineers designed it X way. Why does it not
Hmm.
fulfill the requirement we need to get them this? And like so we spent the time doing that, and now it's like we're kind of going backwards and be like, okay, we'll just design for it because like
Perfect.
it's not happening. And so that's where that
Cool.
helps.
Cool.
The experience.
Awesome. I mean, we covered a lot today. You even covered some of those, that we'll call it lightweight case study of that, helping that one dude who got that, what you say, like $1.1 million check, the $1 million check back, which is really cool. Some of the big picture strategies around those different buckets that you were talking about, which is a good one. And I think that it was really good to tee up the problem, right? About, the grid handling a certain amount of power and it costs more to upgrade it, which I'm sure is being done, but projects run in parallel,
Yeah,
versus cost savings, and then what that means to do some of the actual incentivization. So that's really cool as well. I think it's always important to hear about some of the objections or misconceptions, so to speak, because it's like, this sounds good, but like, does this actually work? And then, will this work for me? And or I tried this and it didn't work before. And so it's important to hear these things because we want to put meaning on the right meaning on events that happened versus, well, I put my hand in the air and a bird got it, so I should never put my hand in the air again. I don't know. You know what I mean? So I know it's ridiculous, but what we didn't cover was like, why do you care about this? Are you really passionate about energy and all the things? Do you go home and think about energy and read about energy, or is it, you just have a group of friends who got you into this, latest passion, and you ran with it, or so.
you know it's hilarious, like the way the world works. Because when I was in high school, I was like,
You wanted to be an energy consultant?
no. I was like, screw the environment. This stuff's all BS. Like I was so the other side of the fence, and now it's like I drive an EV and I have an energy consulting company. I'm like, how does this happen? So like,
You got the T-shirt.
yeah, I got the T-shirt. And yeah, no, I mean, like, I wouldn't say like how I got into. Honestly, I just fell into it randomly. I cared more about having a business than I cared about like this, and I just kind
Mm,
of fell into it. I always wanted to be a business owner. That like seemed, like really fun. And like, I
Yeah.
love people and I love meeting new people. And I love like, and when you're young, I started the company when I was like 23, like no one's going to give you shots like we were able to get, starting a company who worked for some of the biggest developers, like top 10 developers in the nation, like Thomson
Hmm.
Reuters, like Encore Enterprises or Subtext Living, like some of the big names in each of their spaces, and
Hmm.
Altman, stuff like that. And it's like, it would have never gotten that shot, otherwise. And so that was what was cool. But I really just enjoy talking to people and like helping people, and it's like, hey, like at the end of the day, like this helps developers save money. Like
Yeah.
it's not so much about like the like energy code is like tough and like, in some places like unnecessarily tough in my opinion. And so like if we can help you guys like make it cheaper or make some more money from it, like that's cool, and like that sounds like a real problem that can help people. And so that's kind of why I'm still here. It's just kind of like it's a real problem that needs to be solved, and I'm here and I have the experience to do it. And we have a great team, an exceptional team, and so it's just kind of like, why not?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah. And I mean, that helps the developers, but also helps the teams that are doing the improvements on buildings, like you're talking about in that phase. But also, for those of you still listening, and I hope you are, because it's important stuff, is the flow through back to the investor as well, right?
yeah, it
Is what
always
makes
goes
the
up to
difference.
K1, and all of the incentives are almost always designed for the investor, not the developer. So I would say if there's one thing to make certain is that you have a great developer partner, because I probably shouldn't say this, but I can't tell you how many times I've gotten on a call and there's been tons of money like available, like tons of it. And I
Hmm.
am told, oh, we don't want to spend our bandwidth pursuing things that we're not going to get anything for, and it's just going to go to our investor. And that just like always like upset me. I would just be like,
Yeah.
really? Like you like this is someone who gave you their money and their trust, and like
Yeah.
so it's important for investors to know about this stuff, because some development partners literally don't care. Like they're
I'm
just like,
glad you said that. I'm glad you said that because the awareness and honestly, I like, you know, I don't think you should feel bad about not wanting to say that. I think that is a messaging point that you should say. And I think that leaning into that part is something that personally I would like to clip here and have that as something, because it's like, hey, my investors, like things that you should be asking sponsors and people that work with to invest. Ask them, do they care about credit consulting? Do they care about that performance? And that's just a detail, but details matter. And I think that's actually something to lean into, just by the way. And so that it is for if you're making an investment, you want to get the highest ROI, and you should also. What does it say about the team, the management team that is building this or doing the improvements or whatever, who doesn't care about doing this on behalf of their investors?
and there are
So,
some great ones too. Some great ones who are like, we need to do this for the investor. I hear that, but unfortunately, I hear we're not spending our resources on something that doesn't benefit our company and just
mhm,
our investors. Like I hear that way more often than I hear, oh, let's go, like, let's go save our investor lots of money or make them lots. So yeah, very important for the investors to understand. I would say the easiest sale in the world is when we get connected with capital companies like you or other
mhm,
companies who have the money and are receiving the benefit up the chain, right? It's through a bunch of K1s, but like you're going to get it
mhm,
eventually. When we come to them and show the capital groups who understand it, they're by far the fastest people to act, because they're like, wait, so you're telling me I'm just going to get more like a massive check off my taxes, or I'm going to get a big check in the mail and it's going to flow up to me? Like, heck yeah. But like, it really, otherwise it's on like just the good nature of the developer. And in some ways, I don't fault them, because it's like buying a car for the or buying a house for these people. It's like a lot of these developers, they're going to get like, most of them are going to get like three to 10 developments in their lifetime
Mm-hmm.
that they're doing, and they just don't want to screw it up. And
Right.
so anything that like they don't understand, if they don't get it, or it sounds even a little risky, they might just opt out if it's not required,
Yeah.
because they're just like, well, it could screw up, and then I can never develop again, because who's going to give me money if I blow up a development? And so
Risk. Yeah.
yeah, and so I get it, but if you understand it, like a lot of developers do, then it can be a huge benefit to your investors, and to even to you sometimes. A lot of people don't know, but like developers can, like, if the investor doesn't want it,
Mm-hmm.
the developer can pay the investor for it. So like
Interesting.
we see that pretty often too, where like, especially with a lot of the bank structures, like you can just say like, okay, like for tax credits, is like you can just say, hey, like we'll just change one little line in our operating agreement, super simple, and say, hey, instead of us getting this, we want to give it to someone else,
Yeah.
our developer partner, another owner, right? Fully. And you just write that in and transfer it over to them, basically. And so it's just
Or
kind of
having
like,
the option to move it around.
yeah. And some people started getting smart and doing that. At the beginning, they'd say, hey, we're going to pursue these incentives. Let's just write it in the operating agreement now. Who's going to get it? And so like,
Yeah.
but then you can sell it back and forth to whoever. The developer can sell it to the investor investor can sell it to the developer, either way. So it's,
Because it's a credit is a credit is a credit. So if it's a credit and it's just a commodity, then it can be sold, like you're saying, at 95 cents in the dollar to somewhere else, or more if it makes sense or whatever. So that's interesting. We don't need to get into that here, but I think that's fascinating. So the real emphasis here is I wanted to make sure that the listener, the investor who invests with me, invests with others, whomever really understands this a bit more, and I really appreciate you bringing that expertise so that they can think, okay, how does this impact me? Why should I ask about this? For their investments, what should I be looking for? When they're doing analysis of their own deals, etc., and just have that additional intelligence kind of baked in to their own underwriting or own analysis algorithm, so to speak. And so it's really for their benefit to go and look at any deals that come in to ask about that as a question, look for it, etc. And so I think if they want to learn more, where should they go look, or how should they contact you to ask more questions, get more information? And similarly, if there's other, well, I'm going to call them ownership groups, GP groups, the developers, but also I know a lot of people who are acquiring apartments and want to do energy studies on improvements, right? Where should they
yeah.
go as well?
Yeah, I mean, they can go to my LinkedIn is the fastest way to reach me. It's just Charles de Jager. Or you can go to our website at energycreditconsulting.com.
Hmm.
We have tons of resources. It's actually, just go there. And then there's a developer tab specifically for developers. So we're more like architect focused now,
Hmm.
because they're the ones who it just sometimes works easier.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're for developers. Yeah, that's where they can go.
Cool. I'll make sure that is in the show notes as well. So
Thanks.
you want to learn more about that stuff, go check that out. Charles Jagger on his LinkedIn. And it's a cool space to dive into because, it's not only that impact like Charles was talking about, but or the impact on how to helping, but and financially, but impact socially as well. So super cool, man. Thank you for coming on the show.
Yeah, no, it was a great time. Thanks so much for having me. I'm honored to be here. I was so excited when I saw an awesome podcast ask me to come on. So thank you.
Appreciate you, brother. Thanks for joining us on another episode of Path to Passive. We love connecting with our listeners and those on the path to architecting their wealth and improving their lives. Feel free to let us know what topics you'd like to see in future episodes. Get in touch with us through email or Instagram. See you next week for a new episode.